2020 has just begun, and we're already starting to see some standout examples of roguelike and roguelite gameplay. And for this video, we're taking a look at Scourgebringer. The footage that you're seeing is taken from early access and most likely will not represent the current version of the game. But I got a press key for this one, and I am really glad that I did. Because what we have here is what looks like to have some very strong potential in terms of roguelike design. So the story is that the world is on the brink of ruin thanks to the Scourgebringer. And we are the last defense to try and take it out and save the planet. And of course that involves entering procedurally generated dungeons, not dying, and doing as much as we can on each run. As you can tell by the footage, this is an action roguelike. And it reminds me a lot of kind of the high-speed play of this game. This came out a few years ago, if anyone remembers the name of it. It was a black and white game where every enemy died in a single hit, and there was a huge emphasis on kind of high-speed movement. And Scourgebringer definitely falls along those lines. Your main character can move, jump, air dash, or dash infinitely, and has a normal and heavy attack. When you attack into an enemy in the air, it carries your momentum, allowing you to hit an enemy, kill them, dash to the next enemy, repeat the process, and do whatever you can to not touch the ground. You also have wall running, as you saw right there, and your gun. Ammo is along the left hand side of the screen and charges as you do damage to enemies. Now, besides procedurally generated levels, one of the other major aspects of Scourgebringer is how you deal with enemy attacks. As you've been noticing, when an enemy is about to do a stronger attack, you'll see an exclamation point appear over their head. If you do a heavy attack while that exclamation point is over them, it will stun them, giving you ample time to do more damage and hopefully finish them before they get their next attack off. This is a major point when it comes to fighting the many bosses of the game. In the version that we played, there are currently 3 biomes, 3 mini-bosses, and then 3 actual boss fights. And I'm sure the developers are planning on adding in more in the coming weeks or months of early access. Now, getting health back is very limited, and you can only usually get it back from finding lucky items or buying it in the store. Now, when you do die, you go back to this kind of world tree here for the game's persistent element. I forget if it's called Judge Blood or Prime Blood. That is the number 2, or that yellowish or orange orb in the bottom right corner of the screen, represents your persistent currency. And you'll gain that currency either through lucky drops in the dungeon or by beating the bosses. And when you get it, you can return back here, win or lose after a run, to spend them on various passives and upgrades, including getting fast travel, as you can see right there. You'll also gain what appears to be your major defensive option, and that is using your heavy attack to reflect smaller bullets back at enemies. The timing has to be precise because there's a brief wind-up period before the attack goes off. And this is Scourgebringer's way of adding in long-form progression, as well as giving you that sense that you're going to be replaying the game a lot to get what you need to make those successful runs. Now, we didn't need that much, as I beat the entire early access build in the single night of streaming it. With that said, the game definitely has a great look and feel to it, and it definitely reminds me a lot of Monolith, both in terms of the map layout as well as the ability to warp to any room. And that is not a coincidence. Developers have heavily cited Monolith as a primary inspiration for the game. Where Scourgebringer differs is that you're not going to be getting as many weapon upgrades or weapon changes as you do in Monolith. You have your primary sword, and your gun can be upgraded or swapped out at stores. At one point, we got our hands on a dual Gatling gun for just some insane hilarity. And there's a wealth of passive perks you can pick up that will change the properties of your run, such as giving you more damage, letting you move a little bit faster, and so on and so forth. And again, I'm sure there's going to be more added to the game over the course of its early access. And while you can't hear it all that well, there is of course a heavy metal soundtrack, and I believe this was done by Jonas Turner, who did a Tormentor X Punisher as well as other games, and we actually had him on a cast a few years ago. With that said, Scourgebringer definitely works, and I always like it when a game, like right out of the get-go, the core gameplay loop is just really great in your hands, and it definitely has me very excited about the game. With that said, there's only a few, at this point I think they're more on the nitpicky side of things that I would like to see them address or evolve over the course of its early access. And we're going to talk about that next, but first a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. As I said, Scourgebringer already has a very strong foot forward in terms of its roguelike gameplay, and that is a great sign for a game like this to be that strong out of the gates. But there are a few nitpicks that I have with it, and they're more about kind of where the long-term replayability comes in. And like we said, as of this moment, there's only 3 biomes and 3 sets of bosses, and they've already said they're going to be adding more to it along those lines. But the level generation itself at the moment feels a little bit basic. Part of it is due to the fact that our main character here is so mobile and agile. It kind of runs into that similar issue that Spelunky has, that once you're good enough at the movement tech, there's nothing the game can really do to challenge you procedurally generation-wise. And even along those lines, the procedural generation is a little bit basic at the moment. I ran into some cases where some of the floors were generated with just like basically just make one very long corridor in a single direction, and that was the entire floor. And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be enough in terms of variance, both in terms of enemies that can show up, as well as events on the floors themselves. Each floor at the moment will guarantee a store, as well as a passive upgrade shrine. And that is it in terms of kind of bonus ways to improve your character and things along those lines. And I would like to see more things pop up to mix things up. Now, another thing that does kind of hurt the game, at least from a difficulty standpoint right now, is the actual means of avoiding damage. One thing that you probably haven't noticed is that when you're doing your dash, that does not grant iframes. And I don't know if there is a passive perk that may unlock that ability. At the moment, your only ways of avoiding damage are to either outright not get hit by it, or use your defensive measure of your sword. And the sword reflex counter, that is a passive that needs to be unlocked. And I do feel like the game does run into some of those situations where if all the enemies kind of let go or let off their major attacks, there's not much you can really do to avoid it. The high-speed play can also make it a little bit tricky to make very fine controls or fine motions to avoid combat. And you do really have to be careful in this game, again, due to how tricky it can be to get more health. But other than that, and kind of adding in more content, that is really all my complaints I have about Scourgebringer. And as we've said, for a game to be this well along at the start of its early access shows some real promise for where the game can go in the future. And we'll definitely be checking more about this game as it goes through early access, as well as when it gets released. So, with that said, I would like to thank the developers for giving me a press key. If you are working on your own game, it doesn't have to be roguelike, light, or any other variant, and would like me to take a look at it, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Once again, this has been Scourgebringer, and I will see you all next time. Take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.